Welcome, everybody, and welcome to Tech Fry Saturday on twitch.tv/DC Lasair. I'm your host, DC. Amazing how the channel is named after me.
It's very good branding.
It is. It's excellent branding. And today, I have a guest. Yeah. You can type exclamation point guest to get all the wonderful info about the content manager for Idle Champions of Forgotten Realms, TTRPG performer, professional classical musician, and snack aficionado, Lauren Urban. Lauren, say hi to the peoples.
Hi, peoples. How you doing? It is a lot of fun to be here. I am always happy to hang out with you, DC, and also I really appreciate the fact that you took your Tech Friday and moved it a day because and I'll just say this right now, I'm the reason that it's Tech Saturday is because when DC originally asked me, "Hey, would you like to be on the show?" Absolutely. We do Fridays. So I have a small problem, which is a large problem, which is my Fridays are a bit of a mess. So I appreciate you literally moving your entire schedule for me. I do not deserve it, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Oh, yeah. As I've been saying, I would rather have people on than stick to Tech Friday, even though the show will just be called Tech Friday net from now on, even if I put it on a Wednesday.
Just Tech Friday on Tuesdays.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Sure.
I don't have another name for it, so.
I mean, it's not a bad name just because it's got to move to a different day of the week.
All right. So today we are going to start off by diving into audio podcasting. Yay. Which
it's a thing I do quite a bit.
It's a thing you do. Yes. Plug the thing you do with audio podcasting or things or.
Well, the major thing that people probably know me for is I'm the dungeon master for a long time D&D actual play podcast that's right now called Distinguished Adventurers. We've gone through a couple of name changes over the years, consolidating things, and also, sometimes when you name things at first, you do it because it's funny and it's a joke and you're not expecting it to be taken seriously, and then suddenly you're doing it for a living and it needs to be respectable. So we've gone through a couple of name changes, but we are currently Distinguished Adventurers. We just finished our first campaign, which lasted for just over 5 years. You can find that all wherever podcasts are sold. We've been playing a couple of other TTRPGs in between, and we're just about to start campaign 2. So I've been doing that for a little while. And then I've also been responsible for some of the quicker edits of some of the TTRPG streams that I'm on that we've turned into podcasts. Most notably, when I was working for D&D Beyond, I turned a lot of those shows into podcasts. And now, while it's not podcast specific, my role over at Codename Entertainment for Idle Champions involves just a lot of media in general. There are a couple podcasts of a couple of our shows that do go out, but the amazing Trevor Bettis is in charge of those. And I'm just basically doing a lot of the video and audio editing for a lot of different things. But yeah, my start in the TTRPG world literally was just in audio because I'm a musician by trade. So I went, nobody needs to see this. They just need to hear this. That's all.
Excellent. I think everyone needs to see you. So, it's important.
So well, I took the time to put on makeup on a Saturday.
Yay!
So I'm happy to be here.
See, Cypher.
So what do we want to talk about podcasting?
All right.
Oh, yeah.
So
I like being here.
Let's break into the hardware first and your current hardware setup. I'm sure you've gone through quite a few over the years. But let's talk about your mic. Do you use a mixer? Was the flow look like from the sound coming out of your mouth to into the microphone, and then we'll kind of transition that to the software of what you use to gather the audio from all of your other players?
Sure. So I'm actually a fairly simple setup, and that is due to the fact that the 99.9% of the time I am only audio recording myself. So I actually do not have a mixer. And part of that is also because the streaming that I do is also 99.9% of the time collaborative with other people. And so I'm not usually the person mixing the audio. I'm usually, like this wonderful channel, showing up and other people are doing the hard work. Or if I'm producing for Codename Entertainment, it's all coming in from heads and boxes. And so I'm not doing a ton of mixing on my end. So my setup is incredibly simple. Right now, it literally is just I have this microphone right here, which is a Shure MV7, which is one of their mid to higher end audio. I think they specifically talk about it as I don't think it's a podcast mic specifically, but it's geared towards talking, not towards other things, a variety of things. I went with the Shure over a bunch of different options for a few reasons. One being that it had both an XLR and a USB input for the microphone, which saves a lot of headache and heartache if you can have the USB go directly into the computer. You do lose a tiny bit of audio fidelity that you can get out of the XLR input, but then you don't have to have the XLR into a mixer or some other device to turn it into a USB to get into the computer. So the tiny amount of fidelity that I lose, that I think only really refined audiophiles or people listening for it would hear, is a drop in the bucket and is worth the making things simpler, where I can just turn this thing on, plug it into the computer, and be done. So that's my current microphone. I also use, and I'll show this off. So my headphones, I prefer to use what are basically in-ear monitors. They're not headphones or earbuds in the traditional sense, because once again, I'm getting a different kind of audio directly from the microphone. And the reason I like these is because I'm used to them as a professional musician from being able to hear myself while I'm playing. These also sit around my ears in a much more comfortable way than a lot of earbuds that I've tried. And I personally don't like having the big headphones on, partially because I just don't like how they look on me, and partially because I'm vain enough to not want the hair head from the from the headphones, which is just, I don't have a lot of hair, so whatever I have needs to look at least halfway decent. So the in-ear monitors, they're more expensive than a lot of even really nice over the ear headphones, but they provide really good audio. It's really accurate to what I am hearing from myself. So and it gives me a couple better options for when I'm trying to adjust audio levels of like what I'm hearing from people coming to me, what I'm putting out to other people, that kind of thing. So, and that's my setup. That's literally it. The major changes over the last 7 or 8 years have basically involved upgrading microphones and dealing with microphones that I'll talk about a bit about this when we talk about oboe recording. Microphones that either were XLR or had different inputs going into the computer. But this is what I got, and part of it I like because it is so direct. So when things go wrong, I have fewer points of failure. If people can't hear me, then there's way fewer things for me to check to figure out why. And I am in a specific kind of position that I know a lot of other people are not, and where while I do a lot of stuff online, and while I'm doing a lot of editing work and content work, for me, the only audio going into this computer is usually me, and I don't have to worry about mixing, or I'm doing the mixing digitally at least. So that's it. That's my setup, is a microphone that goes directly into my computer, a really nice set of in-ear monitors, and a computer that can run it all.
Excellent. So, what software do you use when you record? Are you you mentioned having different people gather the audio. So for your podcast, are you the person that gathers the audio together of everyone, or is that someone else?
Yes and yes. So I'm the editor of our podcast. The way I gather audio from everybody is, and this has changed a little bit over the years, but when we settled into that works on a regular basis, everybody records natively from their computer on Audacity while we are playing. So that way I have the best chance of getting the highest quality audio from them directly. We also use Zoom as our video software to see each other, and we started using that many years ago. And part of what our Patreon allows us to do is to pay for the version of Zoom that has all the extra bells and whistles, which includes Zoom being able to record our sessions, which is essentially becomes our backup audio. And it has saved our podcast a couple times when someone has had, computer malfunction and they lose their native audio. Zoom is recording and it can upload to the cloud and I can grab it. And once again, like the Zoom audio is not quite as good as the native audio, but it's, first off, way better than not having any audio, and it's actually just really good audio. It's not bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
So when we sit down to record, I have the Zoom up and running, and so it for those of you who use Zoom often, it gives that lovely little recording in progress, and so it just records everything. And I have it set up. There's a couple different ways that you can set up Zoom to natively record, and one of them is that you can get separate audio tracks from each speaker, which is also incredibly helpful. And then natively on everybody's computers, they have Audacity running, and they just have it recording in the background with whatever they're saying. I do a countdown with a clap at the beginning so that I have a lineup point for all of our audio. And then we go from there. And the only things that my players do after we're done is they export the audio as a high quality MP3. They don't do any editing on their end. They just export it to an MP3 and then upload it to where I can download it. And then I do all the editing on my end.
All right. So we're going to talk about a couple of things you mentioned in there. First is
Okay.
Audacity is free
Yes.
software you can get for audio editing. And let me set up something real quick and we can show it. I put in an edited episode of Rivals up just so people can see it. So we'll
Ooh.
break over there. Yeah. So this is Audacity. That's what it looks like. You have your waveform timeline. And like I explained last week, if you're brand new to editing, you've never touched it in your life, the timeline, goes left to right. Horizontal is over time. Vertical is the specific moment in time you're trying to manipulate. And yeah, you
I
can
feel
do.
like I should have taken a screenshot of my most recent editing fun to send along because, oof, it's a lot. Like once you start adding in, all right, we've got multiple people talking, plus here's a music track, plus
Mhm.
here's like my podcast keeps it fairly simple. We've just started adding in like music stuff in specific spots. That's kind of my campaign 2 upgrade. But there's a lot of excellent podcasts out there that do sound effects and all sorts of like really in-depth editing, and you can end up with what DC is showing on the screen wherever it is. That's kind of a good basis, and then you just end up with more and more and more and more going down.
Yeah, so this gray area can fill up with more tracks, and then each track might be a separate audio piece, and you just keep going, and then at the end of it, you can go to File and Export, and Audacity does the work of putting it all together for you, which is very amazing and very helpful. But you can do things like add effects, and we've talked about on this channel of what are they called? VSTs, virtuals, and it allows you to have VSTs. So, like here is the Elgato VST that I've showed off previously, because VSTs, if you're on Windows or Mac, they go into specific folders, and then your computer reads that folder and goes, "Oh, there's VST here. I can use this." And so Audacity pulls from specific VST folder, because if you're on Windows or Mac, it's the same location. It's just got to go to that location, and then they're there for you to use. So yeah, go back in my YouTube, watch anything I talk about audios, and you'll get a longer explanation of VSTs. But so you can do things, volume and compression. Now this is already edited down, so you know this is a completed thing here. This isn't a massive waveforms like Lauren was talking about. And
see, now I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna grab a screenshot of the most recent project that I did. Let's see if I can. I don't know where you'd like me to send it to you, but I'll go ahead and get it in there so you can kind of get an idea of what an in progress editing might look like.
Send it in our Twitter talk there, and I will.
Perfect.
I will download and prepare.
So I'll just grab this real quick, and while I'm grabbing it, I'll say I started using Audacity partially because it was free, and you know what, it's we've all been at that point at one or many times of our lives where it's like, oh, I am unable to afford a something more than free at the moment. And Audacity has a lot of features to it, and I use a ton of plugins with it as well, which helps a lot. I have also been using Adobe Audition. Back in the days when I had a Mac, I used a little bit of GarageBand. So I have used a bunch of other things. And depending on what I'm working on, I have been switching back and forth between Audacity and Audition. At the moment, I just know more about Audacity, but Audition and some of the other options do have more ingrained stuff that they can do. It is really hard, apparently, for me to talk and to send you a picture at the same time. I don't know why that is. Here we go. So what I'm sending to you, that's an image of literally one of the most recent Distinguished Adventures episodes that I've edited. And you're not going to be able to see it all because I can't even get it fit on the screen. But it's kind of showing off a lot of what I'm essentially doing. And this is mostly finalized. I've done a lot of the noise removal. I've done a lot of the compression. I've done all of the all the stuff that basically takes out all of the things in an audio file that you don't want. I've adjusted the music bed so that it's not overpowering the people who are talking. There's a lot going on, and it's one of those things when you first start out that can look really intimidating when you see something like this, and where it's like, you've got 6-7 tracks and all this stuff going on. But it's like anything, it's kind of an iterative process. You start off and try to only have maybe a couple of audio files that you're playing with, or maybe you start off with the audio that is already put together. Like I know a couple of the podcasts that I did for D&D Beyond and that C&E puts out, they don't record the audio separately. Like for Beyond Heroes, I wasn't getting separate audio from everybody. We'd get the video for the stream, and I would yank the audio out of that and then do whatever audio editing I could do. So that image that DC was showing, that was the finalized audio for Rivals, is kind of what I would start with for Beyond Heroes. And then it just turned into, maybe little tiny edits here, doing a pass or two to try to get rid of some noise. If there was an issue and the stream went down or something, cutting out those bits. But the more you do that, and the more you get used to then, okay, so now I'm going to have this and a second track, or I'm going to have this and 3 tracks, or I'm going to get the native audio. And you just kind of build upon all of that until suddenly you've got 7 tracks and music and sound effects and all sorts of things.
All right, so we're going to show off now that picture that Lauren sent me, and there you go. That's a lot's happening here.
And it's funny because it looks mostly empty because at the moment 2 of the people on here are talking, and also You can't really see it in the image, but my audio is actually at the top and it's not even on this picture. So I've got 5 different people talking, 5 different tracks, me and my 4 players, and a music track that is not always going. But in this, I specifically grabbed this spot because it had music in it as well. And a lot of what I've done here, even though it looks like, oh, there's stuff like jumping around here, there, and everywhere. A lot of what I've done is either noise reduction or what can be called noise gating, which is literally anything below a certain threshold. We're just going to get rid of the audio, which is helpful when you have this many tracks of like, I don't need to hear the steady hum of your air conditioner in the background. So I'm just going to go. And then on the bottom, that track, because it's the music bed, I've done a lot of adjustments for the how loud the music is. And you can actually see at about 17 minutes, 13 seconds where it was at a certain length, a certain volume, and I had to make it go quieter because the music was getting louder, but my people were not. So yeah, this is a lot of what I do every week of my life.
Excellent.
I sound more exasperated than I should be, but I really do enjoy. I love these people, and we have fun every single week. And it's, as much as it can be annoying, it's something that I love doing, even when it is annoying.
All right. And I wanted to go back to another thing because, again, I do kind of make these into a 101 and as if this is brand new information to everybody. So the clap that you do during the audio, that is to make a big old spike in the waveform that you can easily see. And then if you line that up, everyone's mouth will match the audio, at least in theory, unless something terrible goes wrong somewhere. And that's due to, clapboards. When film was coming in, when you see the boards and they come down with that little arm onto the board, makes a noise. Well, not a lot of us have those, so we just clap. And again, makes a spike, makes a noticeable sound that you can line up, so you can line up the mouth with the talking.
Yep. And even if you don't have any video to go with that, like even if you're just doing a podcast, it's essential because not just to line up everybody in where they are, but there's always a little bit of lag online. Like I said, we play over Zoom. There is, even when on the best of days, when Zoom is perfect, when all of our internet is spot on, when it doesn't feel like there's any lag, there's always just like a little bit. And so getting that visual spike, like you were saying, to be able to easily line it up, it helps me a ton. And in a that's something else that you learn really quickly as a audio only editor. When there's no video involved, you're still doing a lot of looking for stuff. And the most noticeable is that spike when you do the clap to line everybody up. I'm not listening for that clap. I input all of the audio, I import it all, and then I'm just looking for that big on everybody's audio file to be able to line everybody up, because it's way faster than like listening and having to line things up like that. It also helps. I do an audio pass. I'll tell people, oh, I'm editing audio right now while I'm like chatting or talking with people. And it's literally what I'm doing is I'm going through visually, or I'm taking care of some of the automated processes that just take a little while, but by doing them ahead of time, they help with the actual editing where I'm listening at the time. And so a lot of that time I'm doing the noise gate pass. I'm literally going through minute by minute and looking for stuff in the waveform that I can look at and say, oh, that's not real talking. That's a noise in the background. That's a weird thing that happened. Whatever it is that I can look at, that's an I recognize right. in wave format, my my players' I don't need to listen for it. So if I have an hour and a half worth of audio to edit, one of the first editing passes doesn't involve listening to it at all. I'm usually listening to something else while I am watching the waveforms go by and like, oh, here's a big giant silence because my player was rolling dice. We'll just take that out. Here's a section in where, oh, I recognize that's my friend's dog in the background scratching. I recognize that waveform. Let's just get rid of that. I recognize this. Someone was coughing here. And so you get used to seeing in the waveform what those kind of things look like. If you know the people that you are editing for real well, that can also help. Like I said, I can tell the difference between when somebody, when two people are talking at once and I just need to spread everybody out versus someone's talking and someone else coughed and they just forgot to mute themselves. But that's years of editing audio for people that I know really well. And so it's just a skill that you kind of learn. If I start editing for people that I don't know as well, I'm being a lot more cautious about things. I don't know if I got too detailed in all of that. I kind of
Oh
just
no,
went off
that's
on my
fine.
own
That's why I
editing
do these.
tangent.
So all
But
right.
yeah, that's a lot of what I do. There's multiple passes when it comes to putting together audio, at least at the process that I've now got myself to, that I try to balance out quality versus not spending 3 billion hours on something.
All right. So I'm going to ask you about how you edit a thing, at the editing of the thing, and like the kind of the process used here. So you have waveforms, you have them lined up, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you if you cut something out, now their audio is adjusted, is squished, moved down the timeline. Unless you're just muting it, how do you go about adjusting that and making sure everyone is still like what would you do in Audacity to make that so everyone's still lined up?
A lot of that is just making sure that when I do a cut, that I'm cutting on all of the tracks at the same time. And there are ways in Audacity and in multiple other programs, including Audition, in where you can set it up in where if I'm going to delete audio, if I'm going to cut, it will automatically do that on all of the tracks. So with Audacity specifically, but in other places, you can highlight one track. I can look and say, okay, here's like 5 seconds of silence because someone was rolling dice that I want to cut. I can either have it set up in where I have to manually highlight the space that I want and all of the tracks that I want to cut at the same time. And so when I do that, then it does that for all the tracks, which you want to be careful about, because if you only cut on one track, then all of a sudden all that work that you did to line up everybody's talking is all misaligned again. Or there are ways in where you can tell both programs, you can say, hey, if I'm going to cut something, do it on all the tracks. And that's really useful the vast majority of the time. Especially in some of the audio that I do, the thing you have to be careful of is if you do have a track, say a music bed, that you don't want to cut the music, you're just getting rid of some of the silence in the audio. So that's kind of, why would you use one over the other? It depends on what's going on and what your tracks are. So if I'm doing editing and I haven't laid down any music yet, I'm usually using the thing in Audacity that lets me automatically cut all the tracks all at once at the same time for the same amount of length. But if I've got music down, if this is or if I've got sound effects, if I've got something else going on that I don't want to adjust, then I have to do it manually. So that's also one of the things you kind of learn as you go is your process and what works for you. Because there's other ways that you can do that. There's other ways that you can cut out those spaces. There's other automatic ways you can tell any of the programs to cut out certain amounts of space. There are other ways that people prefer to do it or to have their audio end up. And a lot of that becomes either personal preference, time available, or the style of audio that you're editing. Like for me, because the vast majority of stuff that I edit is performative based, it's a TTRPG that we're performing. I want to edit the audio manually because while 65-75% of the time, if there is a significant amount of silence, I want to cut it because chances are, like I said, someone's rolling dice, someone's doing math, and there are some shows out there that will leave that in because people find it interesting. For my benefit, while I will leave in the announcement of what the number is and what the, all the results are, I don't leave in the silences for people doing math. I don't leave in the math of people going through the math because I don't find that interesting to listen to. It means my players don't have to feel self-conscious if they make a math error. And so for me, it makes sense to go through manually and do that because while most of the time a significant silence is that, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is an emotional beat. Sometimes it is a just natural role-playing space. And since I'm usually in the game, I know in advance where that is. But even then, it's good to just keep aware and be like, okay, this is a spot in where a moment, a pause in the conversation feels natural, or an emotional moment has just happened, and having that silence is important. So for me, that's important to preserve and to be careful of. And so I take the extra work to do all of my cuts manually. But if you're auditing, if you're editing something that's maybe more like the two of us just talking, it's probably a lot easier to do the automatic process of like, hey, if there's silence for more than 5 seconds, cut it down to this and let the program do it. Because if we're quiet for more than 5 seconds, chances are either something's gone wrong or, we've just been thinking, and there's not, I don't think we're going to have a highly emotional moment in the next 2 hours, but you never know.
Exactly. Whatever. We do have a question from someone named Luke McKay. Hello, Luke. Welcome on in.
Do I know a Luke?
Do we know a Luke McKay? I don't.
It sounds like a handsome, wonderful person.
Any recommended online tutorials? Do you have any?
I don't have a specific one offhand. The good news is, I will say the obvious thing, which is nowadays, YouTube has tutorials for everything. I don't have a specific tutorial to offer. That being said, because podcasting has now been around for a decade, and TTRPG podcasts have been around for 5, 6, 7 years, longer if you think about how long Acquisitions Incorporated has been along, it's worth it to do the search for learning how to edit the specific kind of podcast you're making, because chances are very good. In fact, I can say for a fact, you can find not just beginner's guide to audio editing, but beginner's guide to editing a D&D podcast, beginner's guide to editing an interview podcast, beginner's guide to blah, 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 beginner's guide to using Audacity to edit, beginner's guide to using GarageBand to edit. So I would recommend, when you're looking for the tutorials, don't be afraid to look for the specific thing that you are doing, the specific program that you are using, especially the program. Now that I've said that out loud, I think I would actually reverse that and say, look for the specific program that you are using, because a lot of the things that we're talking about are universal. The specifics of how do you go about doing that are going to depend on the program. And so being able to follow along is really helpful. But I don't have a specific tutorial in mind, and that's just because most of the tutorials I'm watching right now are video related.
Yeah.
I'm baby video editor, so I've been doing a lot of YouTube and Skillshare videos there. But yeah, my suggestion is look for this. Don't be afraid to look for the specific thing you are doing and branch out from there.
Yeah. So, for example, I usually edit in DaVinci Resolve. I'm like, I need to do this specific thing right now. So I will type in DaVinci Resolve. Here's the specific command I'm looking for. And then a bunch of tutorials come up, and I just got to look for one that's helpful to me. So I don't have anyone specific in mind for these yet. But yeah. searches usually come up. And last night I did have to go through 2 or 3 before I found one that just clicked with my brain or was the exact information I was looking for, where others were like, well, you do this. I'm like, no, that's not those are part of the words I put in the search, but not the whole thing together in the cohesive sentence I made.
Yeah. Well, and I think you bring up an excellent point, which is not just, is this a good tutorial for what I want to learn, but is this a good tutorial for how I want to learn? Because something that I can listen to and or watch and I'll grok everything I need to off of it is perhaps going to be in a style or a format that is not going to be helpful for someone else just because of how they need to learn. People who are much more visual learners are going to need a slightly different style than people who are more auditory learners. People who, it just depends on the teaching style and your learning style. So that is an excellent point to also bring up. Don't be afraid. If there's a tutorial out there on YouTube that is exactly the thing you need, and it's got 3 billion views and everybody's saying it's great, and you start to watch it and it boggles your mind or you cannot grasp what's going on, chances are it's just this is a style of tutorial and or teaching that is not for you, and you need to find a different teacher, you need to find a different style. So yeah, don't feel bad if you find the popular tutorial that everybody loves and you're like, I don't know why everybody loves this. This doesn't make any sense. It's probably just a conflict in teaching and learning styles.
Or Google doesn't understand your search.
Or both.
Or both.
Or both. Why not both?
I'm like, sentence.
I've definitely
like,
done the thing where I've Google searched something and I've had to find 2 different videos that are all touching on the same thing, but in like Venn diagram different ways. So like, here's one video that does the beginning of the thing that I need, and here's one video that does the end, or here's one video that gives the overview, but it doesn't go into enough of the specifics. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of audio tutorial or video tutorials for Premiere. And sometimes it's like, okay, this person has told me how to do a thing that I know I can now do in Premiere, but they've used hotkeys, and I don't use hotkeys. I prefer drop downs and mouse commands and everything. So this tutorial at least tells me I can do the thing I want to do, and the vagueness of how to do the thing. Now I just need to find a tutorial that shows me where I need to go instead of just being like, use Shift Control A. I'm never going to use Shift Control A. Just show me where to put my mouse. So.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about podcasting? Otherwise, we will move on into recording an oboe.
There is so much. I mean, I could gab on about podcasts for forever.
That's great. I mean, you're the guest, so however you want to drive the ship here.
Here's my tangent that I'll go off on, and that's simply because of I'm going to plug someone else's podcast for a moment. And the reason I'm going to do it is because Distinguished Adventures, my podcast, has been around for a very, very long time. I am fairly proud of the fact that we've been around since kind of the beginning of 5th edition. We're one of the oldest live play podcasts that are out there. One of the others that's been around as long as us is called The Last Refuge by the amazing DM, Eugenio Vargas, aka DM Jazzy Hands. And the reason it's been on my mind recently is not just because they just ended their campaign, and they've been around, I think they've actually been around just as long as us, if not maybe a little longer. We started close enough at the same time. But Eugenio has been our DM on Familiar Quest from Idle Champions, and spoiler alert, he's going to be showing up as a guest on Idle Insights coming on up next week. It's a tiny spoiler, like we tend to like to interview all the people that are on our shows. And so it's a podcast that I've enjoyed over the last couple of years. It's one of those bittersweet things of like, oh, this show and these people are people that I have been enjoying for a while. But I'll bring it up here specifically, not just to tell everybody you should go listen to The Last Refuge, but also I learned so much about different styles of TTRPG podcasts from a lot of us that started at the same time, and things that other podcasts were doing. Like I said, we're a pretty standard. You are a person sitting at the table listening and watching us play this game, and the only thing I'm really cutting out are the awkward bits and the silences. I'm just streamlining the game a little bit, but I usually don't add I don't turn it into a audio drama. Whereas there are a bunch of other podcasts, they highly edit, and there's lots of music and sound effects. They cut out all of the roles in combat. They turn it into a really tightly paced audio drama. And neither of those are bad or good. It's just a stylistic preference. And The Last Refuge was one of those I call it middle ground, and where they do the same kind of editing I do, but also add in a lot more than I do. And I've definitely taken inspiration from them. So if you're looking for other D&D podcasts to listen to, I do highly recommend The Last Refuge. And now that it's done, as sad as it is, it's also it's one of those things in where people who like to binge shows, it's like, here's a finished project that I know you will enjoy that has an ending. So here, enjoy. So that's my tangent. There's tons of others out there. There's hundreds now. I mean, gone are the days in where you could watch or listen to all of the D&D live plays in a week. Now there's a bajillion gajillion. But if you're learning how to do audio podcasts and are looking for some to listen to take inspiration from, or to learn what it is you like and don't like, then Last Refuge is one of those others that I'd recommend.
And Eugenio just joined us in chat. Hi, welcome on in.
Was his ears burning? Did he know? Hi. You were summoned. Yes. I am talking about the wonderfulness of your podcast. I love that I just started talking about it, and I make him appear. I didn't know I had that power. Oh, that is the best power ever. I can make a professional, multi-talented musical artist appear right now. That's my superpower, and I'm sticking with it.
Excellent. I'm glad we can discover your superpower. If nothing else, this show has discovered your superpower.
I feel like now I need to sit down with Eugenio and be like, okay, so this is my superpower, but I do want your consent on this superpower. Also, if you ever want to say no. I just looked over at chat. So listen, there are a few folks who can summon me like that, and you're definitely one of them. Well, thank you. I will promise to only use this power for good.
All right.
Anyway, I'm sure there's many other things I could talk about with D&D podcasting in specific, and if more comes up that I think that is actually useful, I'll mention it. But you want to talk about oboe?
Yeah, and quick aside, if anyone does have questions, please put them in chat. We will answer them. We have a Luke asked a question, and I think we're going to get into some of that right now. So let's break into talking about when you do those excellent pieces that you put on Twitter of recording you playing an oboe.
Aw.
Yeah. So.
Well, what would you like to know? Because there's a lot there.
Well, let's start with the hardware. You mentioned off stream that it is a different microphone setup.
Yes. So if I'm being good, which I'm not always, I will admit, I have a different microphone that was actually my only microphone for a while. If you've watched streams of me that's from a couple years back, for multiple years, I only had one microphone, which was an MXL 770, which is an instrument mic. I specifically bought it almost 20 years ago at this point. I got a great deal on it too. It's a microphone that at the time was running $500-600, and I got it for half off because the store that got it basically had it sitting around forever because it was a $600 microphone. But it's a really, really nice instrument microphone, a cardioid instrument microphone. The good thing about that microphone is it's an incredibly top quality microphone, and it is specific for picking up the frequencies of a physical instrument. So specifically the oboe for me, but any winds, brass, percussion, that kind of thing. So a lot of professionals have used, will use those style of microphones. It's not that it was a bad thing, but because of the style of that microphone, it only had an XLR cable, which is easy. For those that don't know, here, I'll show it on the back of this one. I'll have to talk really loud. So this is my other microphone, but what you can see on the back, this connection right here, that's an XLR connection, which is what most instrumental mics use, because they don't usually go into a computer, they go into a mixing board and all that kind of stuff. My old MXL 770 only had an XLR connection. So I had a Shure connector that essentially was a tiny little preamp that I could then use to connect to my computer. It also required phantom power, which basically means it needs another power source in order to run. You can't just plug it in. For example, this microphone, the USB cable that goes into the computer not only transfers the actual information, but that's how the microphone is powered. Whereas microphones that need phantom power, the cable that is used to transmit the data is different from how it gets its power. So it's a slightly more complex setup. There's a little bit more wires involved. And for a very long time, I was using it as both my oboe recording and my podcasting and my live streaming microphone. And you can usually tell for the live streams because you'll often see it in the frame, because that microphone, in order to make it work as a podcasting microphone, as a streaming, talking into microphone, I had to have it very close to my mouth, because that microphone was very, very good at the cardioid part of it, which is basically the way that the microphone picks up sound. It was very good at only getting a very specific area. It was not very forgiving, which is excellent for when you're an oboist and you don't want it picking up, the slurping of your reed or the keys clacking on your instrument. You only want it picking up the music, but it's not as good for talking, because like, I can stand back here and this microphone will still hear me pretty well. If I did that with the MXL 770, it would be like, you're not here anymore. God. So if you watch some of my older streams, you can tell that's the microphone I'm using, because it's like right here or right there, or I have it hanging this way. So yes, so if I'm being good right now, I use that microphone because it is specifically designed as an instrument mic. And then I've been playing around with a lot of ways of doing the recordings, because when I put music out on Twitter, and I'm not talking about like any of the professional recordings I do. If I put music out on Twitter, I'm once again trying to balance, I'm doing this for fun and I don't want to spend a ton of time editing it or creating it or setting it up, versus my own desire for it to sound really good and look really good. So it's a balance point, which is why I say sometimes I'm bad and I just use this microphone, because it's like, all right, I want to record this thing. And I don't really have the time to break down my current setup and set up the other microphone. This microphone is an excellent mic. Is it as good as the other one for the oboe? No. Are the vast majority of people listening going to notice? No, not if I set everything up right. So yeah, it's a mixture of that. And a lot of the stuff that I do when I'm recording oboe is kind of the same as when I'm recording for podcasts or more vocal stuff. I'm just adjusting audio levels. I'm making sure that there's not a lot of extra noise, that kind of thing. And then, since a lot of that time I'm putting out a video at the same time, I'm often recording the video either through this camera using OBS, in which case, even though I'm the only one doing anything, I'm doing a clap so that I can line up the audio and the video. or I've been playing around with I don't have it incredibly close nearby, but I have a really nice phone. I've the newest Google Pixel, and the camera on that is real good. And so I've been fooling around with recording myself on the camera and then matching that up with I've been just playing around with a bunch of stuff. Um and so yeah, it's been a lot of mix and match. I'm more I feel I have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the fun stuff I put out on social media, because once again, I'm just doing it for fun. As long as as long as the actual oboe playing sounds at a level that doesn't make me cringe, I'm less concerned about the polish behind everything, because it is supposed to just be, here's 30 seconds of oboe playing on Twitter. Um, but yeah, that I've been playing around with a little bit more, trying to find that balance. Sometimes I have a lot more time than others, and so I'll pull out the instrument mic. I'll use the nicer camera. I'll get a couple angles and make sure the sun is coming in and giving me really good light, all that kind of stuff. And then other times I'm like, I just kind of want to play something, and so I'm just gonna stand back here and play and do what you can. And those you can usually tell, because this camera is a Elgato face cam, which is awesome for most of the stuff that I do, which is this exact thing. But if I want to be 3 or 4 feet back, the face cam adjusts to this specific focal point, and you don't really do much adjusting there. So you can kind of see the stuff behind me. It's not out of focus, but it's not perfectly in focus. And so you can always tell the videos and where I haven't bothered to get a better camera if I'm standing back there and you're like, it's just a little fuzzy. It's just a tiny bit fuzzy. It's like just a little off. That's okay. It still sounds good. Yeah, so that's when I put the stuff out on socials. I've been playing around with that. And then if I do, I will also professionally record stuff for recordings and things. I've done oboe tracks for a bunch of couple different video games, a few things that aren't out yet. A bunch of composers who have composed things and want to use real instruments instead of MIDI, or want to use a couple real instruments over like a MIDI bed so that it sounds better. So I do a fair amount of that, and that is always the better mic comes out. And obviously that's stuff I'm getting paid for, but I'm usually not video recording. That's just audio, and that's me going through the process of setting up that in the most professional way possible. It takes a lot of time, but that's what they're paying me for.
Excellent. All right, let's get to this question, and then we'll go on break. So I kind of covered it, but let's pare it down to maybe a sentence or two. I don't know, however long you want to go. Biggest difference between speech recording and music recording / editing?
Biggest. Sorry, there's like 10 different things have come to mind. The biggest difference is what you are trying to eliminate. And by that I mean, when I'm talking, when it's speech recording, usually what you're trying to eliminate is it's mostly background noise and other noises, and then plosives. If I or that kind of thing directly into the microphone, you get a spike. So what I'm trying to corral and limit so that I don't have to deal with it in the editing process is slightly different than when I'm doing a music recording, because like I said, when I'm playing oboe, it's you don't want the ambient noise, obviously, but I'm less concerned with the plosives, and I'm less concerned with with directed stuff at the microphone, and I'm more concerned about the levels, because when I'm talking, I have to do something very intentional in order to be really super loud or really super soft and blow out the microphone, which basically means I suddenly get so loud that I I hit the ceiling, it gets distorted, the sound gets really bad. When you do that in an audio recording, there's very little you can do to fix that. You can always bump stuff up, but once you blow out the microphone, once everything gets over, once it's way too loud, you can bring it down in a way, but it's always going to sound bad. I'm way less likely to do that when I'm talking. Mostly what I'm looking for is to make sure I don't into the microphone those plosives. But the vast majority of the time, unless I suddenly am yelling, I'm not going to blow out this setup, because I've set everything up ahead of time to I'm at the correct distance and everything. And I've been recording audio long enough on streams and things that if I'm going to scream or yell, I know to step back from the microphone and give it a little bit of space. Whereas on the oboe and in most musical instruments, it's actually very easy to blow out a microphone. You can very unintentionally get way too loud. And that's simply because of the dynamic range. Instruments, when you're listening to classical music, it has a ton of dynamic range. Whereas if you're listening to a podcast, ideally, we all have a very similar dynamic range and we're not getting super loud or super soft at all. So that's kind of the biggest difference. It's taken me a while to get to like the one sentence version, but dynamics. Dynamics are the biggest difference. When you're listening to me talk, ideally, I'm not getting too much louder or too much softer. I'm staying at a nice, comfortable level for you to listen to. If you're listening to me on the oboe, if I Ben Stein on the oboe, I've just done a really horrible job playing oboe. You need a dynamic range, and that means it's way more likely something's gone wrong, that you can make something go wrong in the recording process.
All right, excellent. We're going to go to break.
There, I think I got there. I had to ramble to get there.
That's fine.
Thank you for coming with me on that journey.
It was a great journey. I had snacks.
Okay, good.
So we're going to take a break, about 5 minutes or so. So stick around, come back, and we'll have more. See you soon. Bye. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the stream. It's a Tech Friday on Saturday with my guest, Obo Lauren. Hi. Welcome back.
Hi.
All right.
Welcome to Saturday on a Tech Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my fault. It's okay, I claim it.
Lady Luck 34, hello, welcome on in. And during the break, let me turn off Pretzel here so I can. Otherwise, it's just going to get distracting in my headphones. Tech Friday on Saturday? How? What is time? I know, right? I don't know. And Herb, just because you brought up the cat ears, I did, reattach them. So those are there. And we had a question during break. So it feels to me that editing audio, even more so than video, has an element of tedium to it. How do you deal with the tedium? And if you are editing for someone that has a very tedious audio, how do you adjust charges for that?
Okay. So the first half of that question about the tedium, yeah, I mean, there is. Editing can be tedious, even if it is something that I enjoy, even if it's my own stuff, often if it's my own stuff, because everyone has problems listening or watching themselves. But even if it's something interesting, editing can be difficult. For me, making sure I take a break before I start to, my mind starts to wander. And I think it's probably different for everybody depending on your level of focus and what else is going on. But for me, there's usually a point, and sometimes it's 5 minutes into the editing, and sometimes 2 hours go by before I hit it. But there's a point in where I'm listening through to do editing, and my mind starts to wander. And that's the point in where I go, I got to stop and walk away and go to the bathroom, take a drink, do something else for a little bit, stretch, and then come back. Because once I start to get distracted doing other things, once my mind starts to take whatever I'm listening to and wander onto other subjects, and suddenly I've missed 3 minutes of editing and I got to go back and do it again, that's when I know I got to walk away. And usually that helps. So for me, the important part of editing is to make sure that I start it early enough, that my deadline is far enough away that I give myself permission to get to my computer and do 5 minutes of editing and realize that I just don't have the focus for it right now. I don't always have that luxury. Not everybody has that luxury. But if ideally that's what I do, because um it's a groove you have to get into, and once you're either out of it or are distracted by something else, it is, in for me, impossible to do the job well, because there is that point that you reach and where I just have to listen, and while I'm listening to the audio, stop, take out this noise, stop, edit this a little bit. All right, continue to listen. Oh, these two people talked over each other for a moment. So move this, adjust this. All right, keep going. And that can be tedious, even if it's the most interesting thing to listen to. So for me, it's taking breaks as soon as I realize that my brain has stopped focusing. Um, the other question was adjusting rates. Um, I haven't adjusted rates depending on the the content of a. I shouldn't say content. I haven't adjusted my rates depending on the how interested I am in the subject matter. My rates, and I think most people's rates as far as audio editing, podcast editing, even some video editing, is more based on the complexity of whatever is happening. So I charge, the more people in a podcast, the more I charge. The longer the podcast, the more I charge. Is it an actual TTRPG show that needs to have pacing and is a dramatic thing or a funny thing or whatever, that is going to be more of my time and take more of my focus, and I will charge more for that, versus, oh, this is a talk show where just two people are talking back and forth. I'm not having to worry about uh music or anything else that's going on. I just need to make sure these two people sound good and the conversation flows normally. um and then, yeah, the longer it is, a lot of audio editors will charge by the length of original audio recorded. So say I have a podcast that I want edited. I've recorded 2 hours of audio, but I want it cut down to 45 minutes to an hour. I don't want 2 hours worth of a show. So either we're splitting this into two separate shows or whatever we're doing. I'm charging for 2 hours of audio to edit, because I have to edit 2 hours of audio, even though the final product may only be 45 minutes. Um, Also, in general, for just charging in general, um, for audio editing, a good rule of thumb is for every hour of original audio, it can take 2 to 3 hours to edit. Um, Longer for harder things, shorter for easier things. So if you're charging per hour of time, that's something to keep in mind. All right, you're a talk show in where the recorded audio is like an hour and 20, and so on average your final product is going to be, just under an hour. It's just three people talking. You've provided me the music beds, you've provided me the write up for everything, so I just got to do the editing. I'm going to charge the same amount per hour, but fewer hours for that, because, oh, you've recorded for an hour and a half. That's probably like 2 hours. That's probably only going to take me 4 hours total, because it's just people talking. That same amount of time, a 5-person TTRPG podcast, that is a lot more to do. And that I'm probably per hour going to charge 3 hours of my time, just because it's going to be more in depth. I think that answers the question. So yeah, is it tedious? It can be, even for something really enjoyable, but I don't adjust my charging for the tedium. Now I'm also in the very privileged position in where a lot of the audio editing that I do is either for my own stuff or for a couple of things that are bespoke things that I do. I don't make my living off of being an audio editor. Um, I have certainly I certainly understand the, "Hey, this is probably something I've 0 interest working on, so I'm gonna charge a little bit more because this is also gonna be not my cup of tea." Like, I know a lot of people who do that, and that's completely fair. Um, so yeah, but that for me, that's how I'm charging is how complex is the thing? How long is it gonna take me to do?
Excellent. All right. And also on this channel, I've talked about video editing before and how a minute of video can take 10 hours or more, depending on the complexity of it. So think about that in your timing. And yeah, thinking about the complexity of what you're accomplishing is a very excellent point. And charging based on that, because that, as we're saying, that minute, that 5-person podcast takes way longer. You should be charging more. Uh,
Yeah. Also, another thing to keep in mind, I talked about with if I'm editing and I know that I'm going to start doing my editing as soon as possible so it gives me the maximum amount of time to do it so that if I sit down and my mind is wandering, I can walk away and come back. Another thing to keep in mind if you are working for someone else and doing their editing, video or audio or whatever, what's the turnaround time? How
mhm.
quickly how how are you getting the files that you need and how quickly do you need to turn that into a finished product? Because if the person or the people you're working for, if it's a weekly show, then that already tells you, okay, at the very most I'm going to have 6 days to turn something around. Unless they're doing like batch recording, unless it's like, oh hey, we spent all Saturday recording 5 episodes, and so, yeah, one of these you got to turn around in 6 days, but then the rest of these are kind of on your own time. So knowing in advance what the schedule and the turnaround time are can also adjust my rates, because the faster someone needs something done, I'm probably going to charge a little bit more because now I don't have the luxury of scheduling things. I need to just force myself to be more focused. I have to do things faster, and so I will charge a little bit more for that kind of thing. Um, and it's very rare, but if I'm working with a client that is a weekly basis kind of thing or a semi-weekly, it's a regular show, and the idea is, hey, every Wednesday we're going to make sure you get this audio so that you can have it edited by Sunday. But now I'm not getting the audio until Thursday. I'm not getting the audio
Yeah.
until Friday. That's when it isn't completely fair to bring that up with whoever you're working with and be like, hey, um, we're supposed to be doing this. These files are coming into me later. I understand that that happens every once in a while. Everybody's got schedule crap that happens, but this is now a consistent thing. Can we fix that? Or I think I need to charge a bit more because now my turnaround is a lot less. So don't be afraid uh, to bring up those kinds of issues if your expectation is one thing and then as you proceed in the editing, it's turning into something else.
Yeah, and as I bring up with producing is that I would really like the all the assets that people worked on. You have those ahead of time. I need at least give me a day ahead of time because I it takes a while to assemble those in OBS. It's extra time. And if you give me the day of, I may not have the time. It's a real scramble to put things together. And I also need that extra time to think of maybe there's a better way to do this than what I'm currently doing. And if I have that extra time, you're going to get a better product.
Exactly. Or even the I'm putting stuff together and I realize halfway through I'm either missing something or would like something. Both audio and video and streaming, all of that happens where I get to a certain point. It's like, oh, I'd really like it if I had um uh, this music stinger right here. And so either me, if it's for me, going out and getting that from, any of the sources of music that I've purchased from, or going to the person and saying, "Hey, I can do it this way, but do you happen to have this? Because this would be really helpful." If I'm doing a stream like you were talking about setting up an OBS, um if it's just a starting soon, I'll be right back. Oh, thanks for watching and one overlay, And if it's this, two people talking, one overlay, and that's it, I can do that a lot faster. But hey, wouldn't it be nice if also I had some of the images that you want to talk about? If you're promoting for Idle Champions, we often have people who come on to talk who are promoting either their own stuff, or they're on one of our shows, or they have a champion in the game. Having those art assets to be able to throw up onto the screen when they're talking about it would be real nice. Having backup screens so that, hey, if two people are chatting on stream and then one of them loses their internet connection, being able to quickly put up an image just so that it doesn't completely destroy the overlay immediately is great. Being able to do that kind of stuff takes more time, and sometimes you have to talk to the person who is in charge if you're not the person in charge. And yeah, all that is good to keep in mind.
All right, and let's tackle the follow-up question. How do you explain your work, what you are charging to a client who is new to the game of polished audio?
I explain everything I just talked about, really. Because I think most people understand how important it is for stuff to sound good, and a lot of people understand that they don't understand how to make it happen. Um, but even then, I don't think people really understand the time it can take. And so it's literally just educating a client
Hmm.
essentially, which sucks, which is more time. But I feel like if I've got someone who is asking, either they're asking in good faith, hey, what is it, why is this being charged that way, or they're asking because they have a fixed budget and my initial quote is outside of their budget. So maybe by explaining what I'm doing and what they're asking for and what I would need to do to get them what they're asking for, if I'm outside of their budget, there might be things that we can do. If maybe part of the expense is they're talking about getting me the audio on Wednesday and they want it turned around by Friday. And I'm like, well, if a lot of this is getting this done quickly, if you give me more time, I can bring my rate down a little bit. Some of it may be the complexity of what they're doing, especially if it's something that can be made simpler. Um, for example, podcasts, a lot of the time, there's the actual audio editing component of I am taking the audio and doing the things to it and making a final audio product. But then there's a whole other part of podcasting, which is uploading it to wherever you're going to upload it so that it's getting distributed, making sure it's tagged in very specific ways, making sure there's a description that goes along with it. If it's an interview show, having information about the person you're interviewing. Um, all of that also takes time. And if I've got to come up with all of the, if you've given me an interview show to edit, but part of my job is also to do the summary write up, to do the uploading and the setting up so that it gets sent out the way it's supposed to, that's more time. So, all right, if that's something that maybe you can do that saves me time, all right, well, I can adjust my rates. But yeah, a lot of it is just being clear about what it is you are paying for and why you are paying for that. Um, and then if someone is reasonable and needs to adjust their pricing, I will work with people and adjust pricing as much as is reasonable. Everybody's got a budget. And also it means at that point, if someone's like, well, but if they're dismissive of your work, then that's always a red flag of like, then maybe you need to not work with me. And once again, I have a privileged position in where I am able to be picky and choosy about my clients. Um, so yeah, taking a little bit of time to explain what I'm doing and why it takes so long. And most of the time, people are like, "Oh, okay."
And be upfront, be honest, and about what you can provide, and talk with your client to get expectations met. Just sometimes you're mismatched, and you want to bring it to this level. So, uh,
Yep.
I do some light editing, but I'm not a full-time editor. I don't have those skills. If you need vastly more complex editing than what I can do, I'm going to tell you. And like, hey, this sounds like you should hire someone else as well. I can do this. If you want this part done, if you want this bit of editing, I can do that. But it sounds like you want this. That's out of my wheelhouse, and I don't have time to learn all that. So
Yeah.
you need to hire somebody else to do that portion. Please hire me to produce your show, regardless.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Also, don't be afraid to do a trial run. If this is going to be a regular gig, if it's I have a weekly podcast that I'd like you to edit on a weekly basis, and you take a look at everything and you're still unsure of whatever, you can always say, all right, so here's what I think. Here's the rate I'm going to quote you right now is why don't we give this a try? So that you can listen to what it is that I'm going to produce for you, and I can see how quickly it really takes me to do this editing. And maybe after we do a week or two, we can reconvene and I can tell you whether this rate is going to stand, or maybe I can find a way to make this easier for you, less expensive for you, something like that. So don't be afraid to say, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks for you, and then we'll come back, and now that I have a better idea of how this is actually going to work. And I usually phrase it just like that. Like, maybe I can save you a little bit of money if after 2 weeks of doing your show, if I come back to you and say, hey, listen, if you can just manage to get me these audio files 1 day early, or if you can get me these audio files and have them be in stereo instead of mono, or if you can, if you can do this one thing that will save me a significant length of time, I'm willing to renegotiate my rate a little bit and save you some money. So yeah, don't be afraid to give a 2 week quote, a 3 week quote, a 1 month quote, and then renegotiate from there. And that can also be the way to get yourself out of hey, I thought this was a good idea and I'm charging the correct rate, but I really just don't like editing this thing. I really don't. And then at the end of the month, you can say, hey, listen, this has been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I just don't think I have the time to do your project. Let me recommend some other people who are going to be in the same, who are going to charge around the same rates and give you good quality stuff.
Excellent. All right. And before we move on, real quick, a follow up to the follow up. Best drink while editing: coffee, tea, soda, something stronger? Is coffee greater than tea?
Geez. I mean, it depends. I prefer tea over coffee, but that's because I live incredibly close to I live incredibly close to an amazing tea place. Also, it's pop. It's not soda.
Yeah, it is pop. I was
It
just
is pop.
I was just accurately representing the question as posed in chat. So
Hmm.
uh, you say pop.
Yes, I do, but that's okay.
Everyone should say pop.
Everyone should say pop. Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's the Midwestern way.
Exactly.
I mean, to seriously answer your question, the serious answer is have something to drink. Always hydrate. As for what to drink, I don't think it really matters for me. I do try to just keep in mind what time of day it is, but I'm getting old, and so I gotta be careful about my caffeine intake after a certain time of day. I gotta be careful about my sugar intake. So I have a few other things I have to pay attention to for what goes on in here. So for me, it's more important that I just have something to drink. Um, if you are doing this as a nights and weekends kind of thing, whether it is a part-time freelance gig that you've picked up to get some extra money, whether it is something that you're doing for your own podcast, and so you have to do it on nights and weekends. Yeah, be careful about the caffeine. Let me be your mom for a moment. Don't be drinking caffeine at 9 o'clock at night. But yes, have a drink nearby. Don't eat. That'd be my other suggestion. It sounds like, well, I can snack in something, and trust me, I am all for snacking. Don't eat while you're audio editing, because the sound of masticating is way louder than any of your speakers. I'll put it that way to try to be as gentle as possible, but y'all know what I mean.
And that's a good $5 word too. So
Enjoy mastication.
All right, let's break into yet another topic, switching gears yet again.
Mm.
And you produce a lot of shows. And yeah, I've gone on, and there's plenty of video of me talking about producing, but let's talk about you producing shows and what you do
So
yourself. Oh, go ahead.
I'm gonna start this by calling how awesome you are out, DC, because a couple years ago, I started getting into producing shows and learning how to run OBS and Streamlabs and the ins and outs of this. And you were one of the people that I paid for tutorial stuff. Hey, sit down with me and teach me the things that I need to know. And so anything I'm about to talk about right here and right now comes from a bed of learning from which way do I need to point? This way?
That way.
From this man right here. They are awesome. And so they are one of the reasons anything that I do right comes from a bed of learning from DC. But yes, I do at this point do a lot of producing. That is a chunk of my job at Idle Champions is well, one of the main parts of my job as the content manager is I run the Twitch channel, which we do a lot of shows, and several of the shows I produce and am on, and a couple I just produce. So yes, I have had to learn, and I'm still learning a lot about the streaming aspect and the production side of things.
And so, what typically is we've gone into the mic you use, and that you don't have an audio mixer, and so unless there's other hardware you use for producing, I don't think we need to touch on that again. But
not really. Like I said, most of the time I'm just pulling in a Zoom call, so I'm not able to do too much more in the way of the audio goes.
Yeah. So if you want that conversation, go watch earlier in the VOD. Just do the thing. And this is a quality show. You should watch it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So you're taking the Zoom call now. Do you put people's heads into OBS, or what's the software process before you send off the stream to everybody?
Okay. So once I have set up everything in OBS, all of my scenes, all the overlays and everything, I'll use Idle Insights as my main example since that's the show I produce that I'm not on. And that's one of the more simple shows. It is literally 2 to 3 heads in boxes. So yes, I am usually I do have one extra piece of hardware for that I've purchased specifically for streaming and for video capture, which is, and I'm going to point over here even though you can't see it because I'm just that kind of person. I do have a fairly large 4K monitor that I don't actually use. I did use it for a while as one of my computer monitors, and then for a variety of reasons, it was actually too big. It was causing me neck issues. So I have 2 of the exact same monitor that are arranged right here, which is plenty of space for me. And then I have a third monitor that sits kind of off to the side that is, I want to say it's a 36 inch, but it's a 4K monitor. It's a very nice monitor. So when I'm capturing footage that I want at a high enough quality, and I want it to be the only thing on the screen, that's what I put. I turn on that monitor and that's what I put over there. So for me, when the Zoom call comes up for Idle Insights, it'll be Trevor and the guest, let's say. That Zoom call goes on the 4K monitor over on the side. On the monitor, that the only thing that's on there just blown up full size is the Zoom call. That way I get the boxes of people as large as possible in the nicest quality as possible, because the same as audio editing with video, every time you take the video from one place and put it somewhere else, and then take it from that place and put it somewhere else, there's a quality loss. So starting with as good of a quality as I can helps. Then I am importing that into OBS as a screen capture, and I will do multiple screen captures. We have Idle Insights set up so that technically the the Zoom source, the way that Zoom puts out their windows is the same way that the overlay is. So I could just import it and stick the overlay over it and be done,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't then allow for any fine tuning, like, hey, oh, this person stands a little bit to the left on their monitor, or just the way they're zoomed out, I'd like to be able to zoom in on their face a little bit more, or opposite, or whatever. So I pull in as many um screen captures as I need for each person. So if it's Trevor and a guest, it's 2. Here's Trevor's box, here's that person's box, so I can do the adjustment. um on OBS, you can tell it to use it to start the virtual camera, which
Mm-hmm.
basically means whatever's showing up on the OBS screen is what it's going to export as if it's your camera. And I like to do that, especially when I'm only producing, because that means the Zoom call is showing the people on the stream what is happening on the stream, what the
Mm-hmm.
people are going to see on the stream, which I like because even if I end up turning it off, I can at least beforehand say, hey, take a look. Are you happy with how you're framed?
Yes,
Um,
I love
because
doing
some
that.
people, yeah. Some people want to be framed in a slightly different way. And I count myself in that because I stand at my desk. I tend to want people to not close up on my face quite as much. I want a little bit more space, especially for TTRPG shows. But some people want close up on their face. Some people some people are concerned about being inverted on camera, so they don't want it being mirrored. Everybody's got their preference, so I like showing through the virtual camera what people are going to see ahead of time so that nobody's surprised, and then I can always turn off my camera if, because also some people get bothered by seeing themselves on the screen, which I also totally understand. So yeah, that lets me place in the boxes. That lets me also adjust things like on Zoom, there's the little yellow outline that'll happen around
Oh yeah.
people when they're talking. I hate seeing that on
Mm-hmm.
on a stream, so I very intentionally make sure that you can't see the little outline. There will also be their name in the bottom corner. I very intentionally don't want to see the name in the bottom corner, so I'm editing for that. So yeah, I'm editing for my own style, but I'm also editing for um just what looks good on the screen. So if it's Trevor and a guest, I've got Trevor and their guest in separate boxes. If it's a Zoom call, that's where I'm getting all of my audio from. So I'm pulling in audio from the Zoom call. I will very intentionally not have my own microphone in the scene, so that if I am talking, if noise happens in the room, um, it doesn't get accidentally picked up. Um, that does also mean that I need to be careful about other things that are going to happen on my computer, because essentially it's grabbing when it's grabbing the audio from Zoom, what it's actually doing is just grabbing any audio that my computer is making
Mm-hmm.
and outputting it to OBS. So um I can't be browsing the internet.
Right.
I can't look up something else on the computer unless I'm very certain it's not going to make noise, because people will hear that on the screen. Um, so I often have either my phone or my laptop set up to actually pull up the stream so that I can listen to and see, so I can see what it looks like and hear what it sounds like myself to do any adjustments once we're live. And also that way I just mute my microphone and nobody knows. So that's kind of some of the basics. I will warn the ahead of time the folks who are on this. Trevor's had to hear my spiel multiple times because I warn people ahead of time, like, hey, if something goes wrong on the stream and I have to tell you something like, hey, we've lost internet or Trevor drops or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, just so you know, the people in the chat can't hear me. So don't be surprised if they get confused, and that very rarely happens, but it's good to warn people ahead of time. It's good to let people know how they can contact me off camera. In the case of like, hey, I really just need to run and go to the bathroom. I need to step away for a second so that I'm ready to go to a be right back screen. So here, contact me through the Zoom chat. That's where I'll be. Stuff like that. Hey, if I walk away from the microphone, because I'm going to go refill my drink, because the people on, and this is usually before or after the stream, but if I walk away for any reason, I make sure they know that I've walked away. And then I will do the awkward thing and announce when I'm back, because they can't see when I'm back. And I don't want people to be surprised by, oh, you're suddenly back. So I will arrive back and be like, hey, just so you know, I'm back. Just give like those heads ups. Yeah, I think those are the basics. The big things that I learned very, very quickly, especially I've used some other programs. I used XSplit for a little while, and I used Streamlabs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I learned that sounds so simple, but was, for especially for those that were using XSplit, the idea of not putting my audio source into a scene,
Mm-hmm.
so that way, or any audio source from people into a scene, so that we could talk before a show during a starting soon screen. Like, that sounds like such a normal thing, but in certain programs that's actually incredibly hard to do. And it's remembering in each scene, oh, this is a scene in where I want to be able to talk to the people in Zoom, but I don't want anyone on the chat to hear me yet. It's that kind of thing. It's remembering what is in each scene and what music and all that stuff. And that, I think, was kind of the biggest simple thing that's like, why didn't I know about this ahead of time? Well, it's because at the time, XSplit doesn't let you do that. You can't not have an audio source in there.
Oh.
It's like, nope. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh.
It used to be when we were using XSplit before, and I'll take credit for it, before I convinced everybody to go to OBS. It used to be that for a show like Idle Insights, we talk beforehand, and then we would have to give a countdown to the starting soon screen to warn everybody, hey, you can't be talking during the starting soon screen, because people will, or you can, but people will hear you. And that is such an awkward thing. It's so awkward.
And
So yes, I highly recommend, if you don't have a face on screen, if you don't have a person on screen, if there's a not a reason that people should be hearing you, make sure that you don't have your audio in the scene.
yeah, and this is where I use the Wavelink software that you can get with the Stream Deck Plus or this very mic. And so for Rivals of Waterdeep, I just have the Zoom call going to what Wavelink calls the chat, and that's the only audio source that will peer up when everyone's in there. So I could talk to them, and none of the audience would hear me.
Yeah. The other thing I like about OBS is, and so you've got the excellent captions below us, and everybody's got a different way of getting live captions. I don't think anyone has found the perfect way of getting live captions on Twitch yet. And everybody has different ideas of what works. Some things work better for TTRPG streams, some things work better for just chat. One of the other reasons that I was able to convince everybody to move to OBS, because on our channel we have a lot of shows done by a lot of people, and many of the people who make the shows are not their job is not to stream. Their job is to be a developer who then also enjoy once a week getting on stream and answering questions. Their job is to be the community manager who also a couple times a week do a show. So getting some stuff to happen needs to happen as easily as possible. So I was able to convince everybody to go to OBS for a variety of reasons. And one of them is that OBS has a plugin that I use that is specifically for captions, which it uses the Google caption software in order for speech recognition. But what it does is it pulls from, it's a plugin into OBS, and you just turn it on, and you don't have to do anything else except on your side. You just have to make sure that if there is an audio source, that it's paying attention to that audio source that has people talking. which you usually set up once when you set up a scene and then you're done. And the nice thing about that is if I've got a scene that's just the be right back screen, if I don't have any audio sources that it's tied into, it now won't put captions up. So that's the other thing. If you don't want people to be hearing, it's the starting soon screen. You don't want people hearing you talking ahead of time. You also need to make sure the captions aren't picking you up and doing captions. But so
And
anyway, it's a plugin.
mhm,
And what's nice about it for Twitch specifically is it works with the Twitch closed captions software essentially. Which means if you hover over the Twitch window, you can actually press on the little closed caption box and turn on captions, and then you can also adjust the captions. You can adjust where they are on the screen. You can adjust the size of the captions, the color. There's a bunch of other things you can do with the captions, which look like they just make it more difficult to read, but they must work for some people. But and then it also works on mobile, which was the other big thing, is on a mobile device, you can turn on and off the captions and move them around and everything. So we've been using that, which I find
mhm.
are they're really good because it's easy to set up. Once you set it up, you can just ignore it. Nobody else has to have other things running on their computer. So if you've got two people who are used to doing a show and neither of them this is not their job, they're just enjoying it as part of their job, they don't also have to remember to log into a Google Meet in incognito mode. They don't also have to remember this. It just automatically happens in OBS. Um, and they're pretty good captions because it uses the Google software. The one thing it doesn't do, which I wish it did, is it doesn't break up by who is talking. So the nice captions you have on under me right now, or if you use Google Meets and then use their captions, you don't get it broken up by person, um, which sucks. But it was kind of one of those, all right, every version of captions that we could come up with is going to have some positives and some negatives.
Mhm.
What works the best for us and for the people who are watching us? And because the vast majority of our shows are not TTRPG streams, most of them only have 1, 2, or 3 people on at a time, that kind of captions works the best for us. So yeah, that's why I've been using OBS. I find the support for it, as far as like third party support and stuff like that, to be the best.
Mhm.
And the facility with it is just the best.
Yeah, and I use that captions plugin. In fact, it's on right now, and you can double caption the stream if you go over
Double
it.
captions.
Because I use that when I do my video game streams. It's that caption plugin, and I just don't turn it off for these. And I like having the names divided up when I do these, so that's why I do the
Yeah.
pixel chat stuff. And also in OBS, just rather within the last 2-3 updates, it allows you to capture application audio on its own. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to capture, your whole computer making all the noises. You can just say, no, this audio is an audio source, and capture nothing else that happens, just this audio source. And
Yeah.
that's
I gotta
really
play around
handy.
with that. I gotta play around with that because I do use Zoom as an app. And so there's a couple of, and it might not be the same now because I'm behind by a couple of updates, because I am one of those people who's like, oh, there's an update, I'm just gonna wait to make sure it's not gonna break anything. Um, so that's why I usually use screen capture with Zoom, but there are ways in OBS that you can uh do window, it's not window capture, it's like app capture, but Zoom requires a couple of different things you got to do. But knowing that, I'm probably going to go back and start making those alterations, so that way it's one less chance. Once I've got it set up ahead of time, it's one less chance that random noise is going to come through a stream, which is super useful.
Yeah, like right now we're on Twitch guest star, and talking about cutting things out. So I have the little name badge in the bottom left of our screens that we see. You don't see because I just cut them out because they're big, and I have our names right there where you can add us conveniently. Uh, and I really like like the video quality, but if I start playing a YouTube video, because Twitch Guest Star is a browser source, you're going to hear that YouTube video audio come on through, and I can't get around that currently. So,
yep. Yeah, like a lot of things, there's positives and negatives. There's always kind of a little bit of a trade-off, and it just depends on what works for you and your stream.
yeah. Okay, real quick, we're out of time basically, but I do want to get into, because somebody asked about oboe reeds and making those, and you took the time to get a collection of knives for making them.
I've taken multiple decades to collect knives. Okay. Someone asked about making oboe reeds. This is literally going to be the most TL of DRs, because the oboe reeds, I could spend the next 3 hours talking about how to make oboe reeds for me and not even touch on the beginning stuff. Suffice it to say, if I had known in 3rd grade that part of being an oboist was to be a whittler, I would be a trombone player right now. But that's not the way things worked out. All professional oboists make their own reeds. All of them. Most professional bassoonists make their own reeds. Double reeds are it's just a fact of life. It is time consuming and annoying. It is also, as one of my teachers used to say, it's cane from a field. You can only ask it to do so much. It also, because it's cane from a field and it's so thin, they don't last very long. If I have a gig and where I've got 2 rehearsals and a concert in 1 week, I'm lucky if I use the same reed for both rehearsals and the concert. Most of the time I have 2 or 3 reeds that I'm cycling between. If it's a very intensive concert, I might use a reed once and that's it. I've blown it out. So yes, the process of making an oboe reed literally starts with getting tube cane. Like if you picture panpipes, it's just the tubes. That's essentially what I get. I get a pound of it. It's sliced and diced and julienne fried into pieces of I don't have any cane here. I just brought the knives. But basically it's a fairly intensive process. I spend way more time a year, less now that there's fewer gigs, but way more time a year making reeds than I do playing the oboe, because I am a professional musician. I'm not a professional whittler, so I had to do the thing. But yeah, it's a lot of adjustments. It's a lot of adjusting on the fly. Sometimes I will make a read and the next day the weather has changed and now I got to make adjustments because the weather has changed. And so that's why I was joking about the knives, because I have a collection of knives depending on what I need to do and where I need to do it, which is why whenever I need to travel with the oboe, I have to check a bag, because even before 9/11, I couldn't take these on a plane. There's no taking knives, not even a play. I can't look at the TSA person and be like, but they're just reed knives. So yes, I have a whole closet full of reed making equipment. And then what I pulled out when DC said, "Oh, someone asked about making oboe reeds." I'm like, why? What I pulled out was my travel bag, essentially, that I'll open up here. So it's got the 2 knives in it, but then it's also got all of this other stuff that is if I need to make adjustments to a reed on the go at a rehearsal or something, I've got all the basics. And then also a screwdriver for when things get real bad. So yeah, I spend an inordinate amount of time making the thing that I play. And if I had one wish, I want Star Trek, the Star Trek Next Generation, everybody's like, oh, make tea, Earl Grey hot, or food or whatever. I want the thing where I could say, give me a reed that's going to be great for Brahms Violin Concerto. Give me a reed let me just buy a reed. Let me just make me a reed, just teleport me in reeds, and I will be so happy to never have to make reeds again. But we don't live in that wonderful society, so that's why. As my life has become more, as my professional life has become more about TTRPGs than about music because of the Panini, and I've had a chance to now travel a lot more without the oboe, it's been a weird experience, but also a weirdly good one because, like I said, if I travel with the oboe, I have to check a bag because of this. So traveling without the oboe literally is a billion times easier. Partially because I don't have to check a bag, but also because I don't have to put the oboe through security. And no one at TSA knows what the hell an oboe is. It's been called a trumpet. It's been called all sorts of things. They always want to open it up. They want to swab everything. They want to know what's going on. So not having the oboe, the first time I traveled without the oboe and just walked through security and they didn't stop me, I thought I'd done something wrong. I was so used to it. And if I have both the oboe and the English horn, I'm there for an hour. It doesn't matter if I have TSA pre-check. They want to know what the hell, because I was told, because I asked, at one point they pulled me out, looking over the English horn. And I've been lucky. They've been mostly very nice. Most of the time they're like, we know there's probably nothing wrong, but we don't know what an English horn is, so give me. And I asked the TSA person once, I'm like, because every time with the English horn, I'd get pulled. Sometimes with the oboe, I wouldn't, but every time with the English horn. So I said, what is it about the English horn? And for those that don't know, an English horn, it looks like an oboe, but it's longer, and it's got what's called a bocal at the top, which is a big piece of metal, kind of curved. And the woman looked at me and she said, I know it's not this, but on the x-ray, it looks exactly like one of those high-powered rifles that you break apart and put into a suitcase. And I went, my English horn looks like a gun? What?
Wow.
So there, I tangented away from reads, but yeah, this little thing has cost me more time in my life than anything else at an airport. That's all because I got to make my own reads. Please, someone invent the teleporter, or please someone
Replicator.
invent the thing where I could just order reads. Just give me professional reads.
Okay, so internet, get on making Lauren professional reads. Do that.
give me something where I could just let me make one read and then I can clone it. This is what I want cloning technology for. Clone this one really good read so I can just have it forever. I have the simple requests.
Yeah, it shouldn't be complicated. Work on it, internet. Do it.
Do it.
All right. So we are over time. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful having you on and talking to you again, because I don't get to talk to you enough. And we will hang out at con again one day.
Yeah.
And
I still have pictures from that last convention that we went to, the C2E show, that literally we went home and then went into lockdown. And every once in a while, I look up those pictures. It's the two of us like smiling in front of a bunch of indoor trees for some reason. Like, I don't know what we were doing, but that's such a good memory.
Awesome.
But yes, I am always happy to come and chat with you. You are wonderful, and I appreciate you letting me ramble on for 2 hours about things that I love.
Yeah, yay. And yes, that was the first time I met Herb at that C2E2, same as C2E2.
That's right. Yeah, we'd been talking over the socials and the medias, but that was the first time we got a chance to meet. Thanks to the wonderful Tanya at Cipher of Tyr, who introduced us. So
excellent.
Lots of good things came out of that just before lots of bad things happened. And that trip to C2E2 kept me going for a very long time.
Same. All right. We're gonna wrap it up. Lauren, plug all the things.
All right. I am the content manager over at Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, which means if you go to Idle Champions and play the game or watch any of the content, I am involved in some way, shape, or form. You can also find me mostly on Twitter as Lauren. I do have a website, which I try to keep updated as much as possible. Lauren-Urban, which that keeps up with all of the social medias that I at least have access to. And so, when and if Twitter finally goes away, we can all go somewhere else. But I got links to a lot of the shows that I do and everything. Outside of Idle Champions, you can find me on Tuesdays on the Demiplane Twitch channel, which is Demiplane RPG. On Tuesdays at 6 o'clock Pacific for Children of Erte, which is a show that's now been going on for a year. Oof, I'm excited. It's DM'd by the amazing Deborah Ann Wall and includes Alicia Murray, Jen Kretschmer, Hope Lavelle, Adam Bradford, and myself. And we play. I'm just gonna have you watch it. It's. I love the show so much. It is one of the other things that's kept me going the last couple of years. It's been Tuesdays. On Wednesdays every other week, you can see me. It's finishing, but you can see me on the Dungeon Scrawlers channel, where Trevor Bettis has been running a 6-episode Adventurer's Guide to the Multiverse, where I play Orkera, which is the Dragonborn cleric that most people know me for. Also, every other week on Thursdays, you can see me on Arkenholt University, where I play a rabbit sorcerer, a Heron God sorcerer, who is just happy to be anywhere and not talk about any of their problems. And then, of course, I've got my podcast, Distinguished Adventures, which comes out every other week on Mondays, wherever fine podcasts are sold. We just, like I said, finished our last major D&D campaign. We played I played a couple of smaller games, like single-person games, including Potato, which was super fun. We finished a tiny little 7 to 8 episode Kids on Bikes / Kids on Brooms campaign, and now we're getting into D&D campaign number 2.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much once again for all that. And I guess I get to plug the things. I'm DC. You can find me everywhere on. You can find me everywhere under DC Lasair. That's DC LASAIR. Go to dclasair.bio.link to go to all my links. It's a link to links. It's amazing. And if you go to my link and then click on all the links there, there's a little graph that shows me that people have clicked, and I like seeing that go up. And it, I like seeing the inclined plane. It's a thing. Make the lines go up. Exactly. Lauren, you are muted.
I muted myself because this noise is going on back there, and then I forgot. Go and click on DC's links, because you should make him happy, and we're all TTRPG people who like watching numbers go up.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm the producer for Rivals Over Waterdeep, which the Penny Epi, I'm using the term Penny Epi, episode is tomorrow. So go watch that. And then a couple weeks after that will be the very last episode of Rivals of Waterdeep. And I have feels.
Such a good show.
There's only so many whooshes left, and I don't know how I can't handle that. Yes, cat. My cat has decided to make all the noise right now as I'm trying to wrap up. So we're giving the cat scritches. Hi. Why now? We're trying to go. Lauren's been lovely. Yes, we're trying to leave.
Listen, I appreciate that the cat waited until the very end.
Yeah. And so follow me. You can hire me to produce your things or teach you about how to produce the things. Go to my Ko-Fi right there. It's lovely. I have a Patreon too. It's /DC Lasair. To check out this episode, go to my YouTube. It will be up either Monday or Tuesday. And you can check out all the previous Tech Fridays there in a handy dandy playlist. And thank you all for being here. Oh, one more thing. I gotta remember to plug these more. Sorry. Notion templates. I make them for TTRPG spaces. So check them out. Let's see here. Exclamation mark. Templates. That's the command. So the first one, the first link there is a DM screen, a player's journal, and a bunch of other things related to TTRPG shows, if you'd like that. The second one, AP actual play production templates, which we are calling the Lasair method because the Twitter poll said I should. That'll take you through pre-production all the way to post-production. So check that out. And once you hit that duplicate button and put it into your Notion, it's yours to mess with how you like and modify how you need. So please use them. Tell me you like them. Please tell me you like them. I need validation. So please check those.
Validation.
Yes. So, like and subscribe to all the things. Like and subscribe to all the things Lauren's doing. And we'll see you all later. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks again to Lauren for stepping on in and coming in on Tech Friday on Saturday. It's been lovely seeing you all.
And thank you once again for having Tech Friday on Saturday. I appreciate it.
So it's been amazing. I've loved it. And I will see you all next week. Programming note: next week will be Jen Kretschmer. They'll be back on Friday. We will be talking accessibility tech and a bunch of other things. So that's the current plan. And yeah, I'll have that scheduled, and tweets will go out, and another fancy graphic with me pointing at a picture of the person. Uh, if you go look at all the Tech Fridays and all the promo graphics I've done, I kind of rotate around the screen and point at the person from the side. So so I will see you all Monday when I come back for more Tears of the Kingdom, because that is my life now. And noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. See you all then. Thanks for being here, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.